And there we all are.
Oh,
Good morning, everyone. How are you? I hope you're
Good
having a
morning.
great Monday so far.
Yep,
So, I'm
we're
your
off.
host, Nina, and you're watching the This Way Network, the chat session. And there's
Yep,
my co host, Rodney.
coffee in hand.
Yep. And our guest today, Mia Pyle. And we
good
are so
morning.
glad to have you, Mia. It's been too long since you've been here.
I'm so glad to be here. I love being on the show with you and Rodney. It is always so powerful. I feel like I leave just with new things to think
Mhm.
and meditate about. So I'm glad to be here again.
Good.
Definitely. We feel the same way. And I love the
Well,
topic you picked for today. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, when you told me what you wanted to talk about, you said you'd actually been pondering over this for a while. How did
Yeah.
God bring this to your attention?
Right, right. And so I wanted to talk about how God actually helps people, right, in the Bible, because a
mm,
lot of times you hear people say, if a person has a problem as a Christian,
hmm
the answer
hmm
usually is, well, go to God, just take it to God in prayer, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
you got to seek the face of God, when you're struggling. And definitely when I just before I went to the behavioral health hospital myself for,
hmm
my desire to no longer be here, people were telling me that, and it just didn't seem very
hmm
practical. At that time, I felt like my faith in God hadn't really gotten me anywhere, right? Because
hmm
why was I praying and still feeling like I was struggling and nothing was happening, which then led me to think, oh, well, God doesn't hear my prayers. I must be too far gone. I must be such a terrible person, or either
hmm
God's not real. Maybe that's what it is, because this is like the worst time in my life right now. And to
hmm
me, where is he, And that's why I
Right.
want to
Right.
talk about this.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I
So
think a
go
lot of
ahead and
people, a lot of people
go ahead.
worry about those things, and you're right. I think that many times people are expecting the Lord to pull us out of certain things. I mean, and of course, every pain that we have, everything that we feel, everything that we're experiencing is real, real time, real
Mhm.
problems. But and then people are going to seek answers, and sometimes it's on our timetable. We feel that the whole world's gonna crash if this thing doesn't happen. And oftentimes it's funny. I've had things that I thought was going to be the end of me, and after it's over, I'm like, I survived. I got
Yeah.
through that. That wasn't so bad after all. There was some other type of there was I believe the Lord is one of detours. Sometimes we're on a
Mm.
highway, and and the Lord is so powerful about just going whoop and just opening another opportunity or another solution to the problem. And
Mhm.
sometimes you can't even imagine the answer coming the way that it does, but it does.
Mm.
You
You know
know.
what? I read something on social media yesterday that I thought, oh man, this is about our topic. This is exactly about our topic tomorrow. Because this lady told how she had worked with her daughter all summer long to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to write her name. And so the very first day she goes into kindergarten, the
Mm-hmm.
teacher is greeting each student at the door and she says, "Good morning. I'm so glad you're here. When you step inside this door, I want you to pick your favorite color of crayon and I want you to write your name with it." And the mother was like, my daughter's going to be able to do this. We've been working on it all summer and she writes her name beautifully. And to her surprise, her daughter just looked like a deer caught in headlights and she just shook her head no. And the teacher was like, don't you want to write your name? And the girl was, so she's like, it's okay. I'll teach you to write your name during this year.
Mm-hmm.
So the mother goes home. The girl has, a great day in class. And as the mother is taking her home after class was over, she said, sweetie, why was it you didn't want to write your name? We practiced it all summer long. I know you know how. And the girl said, but mom, She didn't have my favorite color of crayon there.
Wow.
And then the mother said, you know, sometimes we get so focused on one way, just the one way that we think God
Hmm.
can answer our prayers.
Yeah.
And we're not open to the other possibilities that God might have in store for us.
That is so true. And I love that. And I really believe that as Christians,
Hmm.
we can be equipped and prepared to answer the mental health crisis that is upon the world, and to
Hmm.
know that the answers that we actually have from the Bible are very relevant. They are extremely practical and they are actually scientifically based, right? Because,
Oh,
and that was what I learned in my journey. I believe God answered he was answering my prayers because I thought the prayer should be answered. God, I'm experiencing extreme anxiety. I don't know how to deal with this new baby that I have. I cannot sleep. So I think the answer should be here goes a nanny miraculously appearing out of somewhere to help you and your family. But that did not happen. But that was a blessing because through the storm and the trial, the idea for Mama's House was born. And Mama's House is going to be a facility that we create, right? And they have some in the world already, but this is going to be done pain unwasted style, right? Where women who are postpartum can actually come and get the care that they need. They can have that mom that maybe they don't have in their life. Because through the journey, I learned there were other women who were experiencing postpartum depression, have this baby, have no help. And even though I was married in a wonderful marriage, my husband had to go back to work. Our situation was different. We needed help and we didn't have it. And so that place that I'm going to create will be for those moms, those teen moms who are experiencing postpartum depression, who need someone to come in, help cook, help clean, hold the baby while you shower, help take care of your other kids that you may have, but you need help and you don't have it. You don't have a nanny. You don't have the finances to take care of yourself so that you can show up well for your kids. And so that was an answer to my prayer because God was giving me vision through my experience. But there are other practical things that God does in the Bible, and He led me to them. And I know we'll get into it later, but I really wanted to be able to share this with other people so that when people come to them, they don't have to feel like just go to God and, well, what does that mean? Like when I go to God, what does that mean? I'm already going to God. Like how can I actually expect that God's going to help me? And the scriptures outline that. There are places where God literally outlines how he helps people when they're battling with their mental health.
I mean, me personally, like I said, I look at a lot of, I don't know, sometimes I take things, well, I take things pretty literally too. And
Hmm.
my thing is, I think that is it sometimes that people doubt that the Lord is capable of doing things. And sometimes I think it's also a faith walk too. A lot of people, when you're going through things, your faith is being tested.
Hmm.
And I think many people forget that these circumstances, these situations, and we need to pray for all the people down there in Florida and North Carolina that are dealing with this horrific flood. It was really weird.
Tennessee. Mhm.
Yeah, in Tennessee, they were saying that this weather storm that came through, the last weather storm last year, they said when it came through, they said it rained, and these very same areas that they were really worried about, they said nothing happened. This time, it just completely, they said the same house. This woman said the news was there talking to somebody at this house, and then they went back and that house is gone. And they were talking to that person just last year, and they said, we don't know what happened. And so, you know, we have to have the faith to understand that the Lord can move us beyond these things. The Lord can help us through. And again, you're coming from a mental health perspective, which I understand. And I just think that we also do need to believe that the Lord is with us, that we're not abandoned. A lot of people, when troubles
Mhm.
come, people feel like the Lord is just, having a cup of coffee and sitting on a cloud, and he doesn't see our calamity that is creeping up. but that's not true. I mean, he's got it all under control. And I think that we as people, we want to hold on to some bit of control in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I think that might be an issue too.
That is so powerful. I'm so glad that you said that, Rodney, because from a mental health perspective, and for those who may, this is your first time, I guess, seeing me on the show.
Mhm.
So I am a mental health first aid instructor, which means I'm not a therapist. I am a person who trains the everyday person on how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental illness and how to respond appropriately and how to connect that person to resources. And that's literally what I do. So I go to different businesses and companies and I train their staff, their team, including psychologists and social workers, because we can all have a tune up somewhere, right? Including myself. And so this is what I come in to do. So I say that because I want to definitely stay in my lane. The things that I'm saying, I don't want anybody to hear and say, oh, this is going to replace therapy, or, because one thing that I do want people to walk away with when they're listening to the show is to know that spiritual health and mental health are so combined. I think a lot of times the world, as we know it, or the secular world, if we can say it that way, people who maybe don't, claim the Bible as an authority, don't believe, perhaps in God as an authority in their life. Sometimes the secular world, and even I would say the Christian community, we can try to divorce mental health from spiritual health, but they are married and they are intertwined. So when we're talking about our spiritual health, how our spiritual health can really affect our mental health, and our mental health can totally affect our spiritual health, just like our physical health. The act of having a baby is a humongous deal, right? Hormonally, things are just different. And so your physical health totally can impact your mental health. And not for everyone, but for those that it does, it's normal. And it's not a sign of weakness, and it's not a sign of lack. And that was a huge thing that I needed to understand as a Christian, as a spiritual person that loved God with all of her heart. When I was experiencing mental illness, I thought that meant I lacked faith, but that was not true. I lacked knowledge. I lacked understanding about the different ways that God can help me, right? That there was, just like Nina, and you said it too, Rodney, there are so many ways that God may seek to answer my prayers, but I'm locked into my favorite color, and not realizing that, hey, Mia, I've got a totally different way that I'm going to do this, because it's going to open up other doors that are needed in the world. And I know that I can trust you to go through this. I can trust you to go through this because I know what I've put inside of you. What do you think about that? Because I know you all have had trials, fiery trials as well. What do you think about the reframe that God's not just necessarily testing you? Because that can feel, wow, you're testing me. I can tell you right now, I'm going to fail. I don't want to do this test.
Yeah.
What if
I
there's a
feel weak. Yeah, I
Right.
feel weak. I feel unable to do this. And yeah, I keep thinking about, and I guess because I relate to it so much, I had to sit on the couch last night while I was looking at all the reports coming out of South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, and all I could do was cry. I just had to let myself have a good cry for those people, because I could relate to it so well, that feeling that I've been caught in this huge tidal wave that has literally, ripped away everything that was familiar to me. So people who have lost loved ones, who have lost their homes, who have been totally displaced from where they were living, who might be injured, and now even if their home is there and they're in it and maybe they're physically okay, but still they've got 3 trees down on their home and they're open to the elements, and they don't know what's coming next. And there's no power, there's no cell phone service. None of the roads are safe to travel on, so it's not like they can get out or be evacuated easily. Supplies are being dropped to them by helicopter, but sometimes that's in a certain spot and they have to just get to that. And
Yeah.
just going outside feels so treacherous right now. I don't know if another tree is going to come down or if there's going to be more mud, you
Yeah.
know, sending them tumbling down the mountain. So that whole uncertainty that they're going through now, and I can imagine that feeling of which I think we've all had at least once,
Absolutely.
where you're thinking, I just want to be able to wake up from this nightmare and go back to what I know and what is familiar, but knowing things are forever changed and will never be the same. And you cannot imagine, especially because the first several weeks at least are going to be, you're still going to be stuck in this and seeing no way out. So the trauma of that, the
Mhm.
great trauma of that, of the loss, the injury, um, it's hard to wrap your head around. And if I'd be
You-
crying right now if I hadn't had my good cry last night. So Mia, what can we expect when we're in these circumstances, when it looks to us like there is, sometimes it's not just there's one way God can answer my prayer, and that is to reverse time, and this never happened. And of course, that's not going to happen. So, and maybe then we're thinking, well, I can't see any way God can fix this. There's no. It's always going to be terrible after this. What can people expect when they pray? What can they hope for God to do when they go
Mm,
to Him and they say, God, this is too much for me?
yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And so I want to go straight to the Bible, right? And I'm not going to read it. I want people can go back and read it for themselves. But it's the story of Elijah, right? The story of Elijah. He was a prophet and he had done amazing, mighty miracles. He had seen God's hand or God's blessing in his life. And I believe that can resonate with all of us, where we have lived in a season where we see God's mighty power on our life. And so Elijah is able to start a revival of the Israelites, right? Because he brings down the prophets of Baal. He sees fire come down from the sky and take up his sacrifice, and the people are empowered to take away all the false prophets and things of that nature that have been causing their land famine and problem, right? And they're able to see God's mighty hand do an extreme miracle, right? Because his sacrifice was wet, and it's an amazing time in Elijah's life. He's able to literally outrun a chariot on foot, and sometimes people are like, well, can that really happen? Look at these Olympians. It can totally happen. Right? Like these Olympic people are so fast. And so he has a high season in his life of huge blessing, but then he faces a trauma like what you've explained. But his trauma isn't a natural disaster in this case. His disaster is Jezebel is angry, and she's saying, I'm going to take your life like you've done the prophets, you know and people would say, well, that doesn't make sense. Look at all you've done. How can you be afraid of her? But for whatever reason, he runs for his life. He runs for it. He is facing a trauma. He is having a traumatic experience, right? And
Mhm.
well, someone might say, well, he should have had faith in God that he could take down Jezebel like he did all the other people. But that was not his human response. His human response was to run. And the first thing we see God allows people to do is to feel their feels. Okay. And I love that. Okay. So if you were writing this down, person who's watching and listening, how does God help people? How does God help people in their time of great extremity? Write that down. The first thing that God, I believe, from looking at the scriptures, he allows people to do is to feel their feelings. He allows Elijah to be afraid. He allows him to run away from Jezebel. And when you go back and look at this story, you're going to see that Elijah starts isolating himself, which is something that people often do when they're going through something really hard. They want to be alone. Don't bother me. Don't talk to me. I want to be alone. Right. And Elijah, he leaves his servant and he goes a far journey away and he's isolating himself. Then he starts sleeping, right? And he's sleeping so much that an angel actually has to wake him up. And so that's number two. What does God allow? God allows people to rest.
Mm, mm,
And this is something we allow ourselves to do as well. Feel our feelings. You said you cried on the couch, right? Number two,
mm,
rest. Elijah needed to rest. He didn't wake Elijah up. Let's do this Bible study. Let's have this big talk about how you're running from this person when I just used you. No,
mm,
he allowed him to rest. Copious amounts of sleep to the point that Elijah, in those times, people needed to plan to make their food, right? You couldn't just go to the microwave or the oven. You had to, kill something and clean it and get it
mhm,
together
mhm.
or bake something, break something. You had to make your food from scratch. And so when the angel wakes up Elijah, which is another one, God sends angels. We may not see them, but our angels are there. And sometimes he uses people in people form, actual people, to be those angels for us. Number three, right? So feel our
Mhm,
feelings. We get to rest. He has an angel come and wake him up, right? And the angel
mhm,
not only wakes him up, but the angel feeds him. You're going to see that in that scripture. And I'm going to share the scripture. It feeds Elijah bread, right? And so that's something that really stood out to me because I remember being in the behavioral health hospital. Someone else would call it the crazy house, right? But that's not what it
mhm,
was. It was a place of healing. And so in the behavioral health hospital, I remember they fed us very well, right?
mhm,
We ate gourmet food in this particular place. And I'm not saying it's like
mhm,
that in other places. Maybe it needs to be revised, right?
Right,
But,
right.
but where I was, the food was gourmet. Like it was not only delicious, but it was beautiful. And so I can
Wow.
only imagine what that loaf of bread must have looked like that an angel from heaven gives Elijah, right? And
mhm,
so, wow. So there we go. God feeds us well. And we should also remember to eat well. And there are so many
mhm.
scientific studies about the importance of rest, about the
Right,
importance of good nutrition, about the
Mhm,
importance
right.
of having the right type of people around us, right? And so even though Elijah wants to be alone,
Mhm,
there is an angel there, you know?
mhm,
mhm.
And so guess
That's
what?
wonderful.
God even allows Elijah to go back to sleep because when you go and look at that scripture, he eats and then he goes back down to sleep. And he sleeps so long the angel has to wake him and feed him again. So that's also signs and symptoms, right? As a mental first
mhm,
aid
Mhm.
instructor, when a person's sleeping a lot, that's something that maybe makes our, discernment or our spidey senses raise, to say, hey,
Mhm.
something might be not quite right for this person. I need to pay attention. And so as a mental health first aider, I like to say God, the Holy Spirit, allows him to get more rest, get more food before he even starts to address Elijah's distortions. Because that's what's
mhm,
happening for Elijah. Elijah is believing lies. His trauma has made him start to believe lies about himself, about God, and about others. And you even see that
mhm,
in the same scripture. Because later, God's going to ask him a question. He's going to say, Elijah, why are you here? That's another tip. God asks us questions. God already knew why Elijah was there. He's God. God knows everything. Why is he going to ask him a question? Because he wants a conversation. He wants communion. And note that this is what happens in our lives too. A therapist, if we go to therapy, or if we go to a really good friend, ask questions. Don't just give them the answers. Don't just tell them what you should do is, right? Well,
mhm,
remember, Psalms 138, verse 8 says, God didn't do that. He didn't go down the scriptures right away, He asked him
mhm,
questions so that Elijah could speak and say what's on his heart and on his mind. So God asks us questions. And God also, that's another one, God allows us to speak our truth as we see it, even if it's not the right thing. And what does
mhm,
Elijah say? He says, I'm the only one who's serving you. It's only me out here that's doing your will, God. you know?
mhm,
And that's not true because God then tells him, no, I have other people who have not bowed their knee to Baal. But here's another cognitive distortion that Elijah believes. He believes the wrong thing about God. And I really want to magnify this because we're talking about disasters, right, Nina? You brought
Yeah.
in natural disasters. People right now are experiencing a natural disaster. And one of the things that people often say is, this is an act of God. God has done this. What were the people doing in that area that God had to make this happen so they can wake up, right? And you're going to even see it in the news. You know, an angry God has allowed this. America needs to get back to its ideas, and if God, you know, is not happy, and we need to, it's because we've done something wrong. And that's why these disasters are happening, right? And so now you have people that are going to curse God because they're like, well, I didn't do anything. I just was here, right? And so God
Yeah.
actually, God actually addresses his cognitive distortion. He believes that God should be in the thunder and the hurricane and the power, but God shows up in a still small voice, a still, because it was like after the cloud, after the rain, after the thunder,
Right.
there was a still small voice. Peace.
Wow.
Peace. Be still.
Question. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, I see this too. Also, there, Elvira was talking about in Poland, people are struggling. They had a major flood over there in Poland as well. And the key thing is, I think this is an opportunity for people to be able to step out and show that heart of compassion. Maybe it's a neighbor that they don't know, and this is a faith walk for people to open up their heart and say, well, I have, these old dresses, or I have these clothes that are just stored away. Maybe I can give them to someone who's lost it all, because having a little bit of something is so much more better, and actually giving from the heart. A lot of times people want to give things away that they just don't want. Sometimes it's good to give away something that you want to keep and
Yeah.
really bless somebody. If you've got that new coat and you've got 5 new coats, give somebody a new coat, not an old wore out, tattered coat that you were going to throw away anyway. Give them something good. I believe this is an opportunity for people to step up. And the Lord, and trust me, the Lord is watching, and the Lord knows how far we all can stretch. And when people say, well, I just got enough for me, and and we shouldn't ever forget the times that when we went through those dark periods, how somebody pulled us out. I think that when I look back at my life, and that I've had friends crash with me, I mean, literally, they lost their place, and they called me and said they didn't have nowhere to go. And I said, well, come crash with me. I said, man, look, I got a spare room. Come crash with me. You have to sometimes step up and do that. And that same heart that someone put out for you, you can put out for someone else.
And I love that you said that, Ronnie, because that is actually one of the last things that God does for Elijah in this section.
Mhm.
Like, one of the last things he does after having allowed him to feel his feelings, after letting him rest, feeding him well, having that companion come his way, ask him questions, address his cognitive distortions, right? His lies believed about himself and God and others, right? One of the last things he does for Elijah is he gives him a mission. And this is totally a part of our healing, just like anything else. I heard you saying God gave you that mission. You had the ability and the courage to house someone in your
Mhm.
home, right? And God gives us all different gifts, right? Everybody's not called
Mhm.
to open up their house, but they may
You're right.
have the ability to buy a house for someone. They may have an
Mhm.
ability to give some money, or to actually open up a room, or bring people together. God gives Elijah a mission. And his mission is to go to and I always say the names wrong. There's Elisha and Elijah. So you have to go
Mhm.
back, right? But there's another, it's either Elijah that comes on the scene now. Elisha's mission, if I'm saying that correctly, Elisha's mission is to now go to Elijah with a J,
Mhm.
and to eventually he passes the mantle on to him, right? And
Mhm.
he mentors that young person, he helps that young person, and that person winds up opening the school of the prophets, where now more people are able to learn about God and learn how to serve the Israelites and have a missions, basically a mission school. And guess what happens for Elisha, he winds up being taken up to heaven in a fiery chariot, like what more can and so that's incredible, and for me as a total believer in the Bible, like I'm so grateful that God shows that, like in our wellness journey, he will give us mission even when we don't feel like we can serve someone else, or I'm so down, or I'm so broken, I need to focus on me right now. Well, there may be a season for that, but there's also a season to now help other people, because it's in helping others that we will also be helping ourselves, right?
Mhm.
There's the story of a people sitting around a round table, and my friend shared this with me, and they all had these really long spoons, right? And no one could feed themselves because their arm was too long and the spoon was too long, but they could feed the other person going around that
Mm.
circle. And in every person feeding the other person, they were able to be fed, right? And so that's a lot of times what happens, and that's why I love getting on shows like this, because it reminds me also, Mia, you know, things are going to be okay. God is with you. God is here. There are ways that he's going to help you, Mia, just like you're sharing with other people. Remember what you said to the other people, Mia. That's for you too, not just for you to tell other people, but for you to listen for yourself.
Yeah,
Mia, do
absolutely.
you think people don't share enough? I think that, what you're saying, those stories like that, I think that people forget about these opportunities. And Nina's been through stuff, and you've been through stuff, and I've personally been through stuff. But I think that when you can share real hope for a person, because Nina's situation was real, your experience was real, I've experienced things that are real. But when you
Mhm.
share that from someone and say, look, I thought my whole world was going to crash at this point, but this is the outcome, to shine that little bit of hope and say, I'm still standing. I was able to get through this, and this is how, and of course, having that mental health support, the right way of feeling. And like you said, it's okay to be angry. It's okay. I remember you being on the show and saying sometimes it's good to feel this way, but you got
Absolutely.
to get beyond that, because some people get locked into that anger or that, you know, and you
Mhm.
have to get it out, because holding it in can also be worse,
Very toxic.
whatever the trauma is. And sometimes you do need to go speak with somebody, and you need to speak with somebody with knowledge, and also who has the heart, because sometimes taking advice from your friends, that's not the thing to do, because, sometimes they are not coming from the right mindset, and I
It
understand
feels
that.
to me like a lot of times, and I see this so much on social media. Somebody comes on and they talk about how angry they are about something or how they've been wronged, etc., and all their friends pile on. Some of them will say, "Well, you shouldn't feel that way because as a Christian, you should do this." But most of them pile on and say, "Yeah, you're right. You're totally right to feel that way, and I would too, and you're completely justified." And they actually just keep feeding. So I sometimes wonder, okay, so what is the middle ground there? What can we
Right.
be saying to people to acknowledge the way they really feel? Because they do need to feel those feelings, at least for a while. But then also to be able to say, hey, there is hope. This is going to change. This too will pass without sounding glib about it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I learned in this journey, because one, knowing who to talk to, and to be honest, I feel I would love to wear a shirt just walking around saying therapy, yes, yes, therapy, yes, right? Exclamation points all around my shirt,
Mhm.
But for some people, therapy may not be something they want to do, and so it's finding people in your life that are therapeutic, like being able to find that
Mhm.
friend that is non-judgmental, that will allow you to say what you need to say, even if it's with curse words, because they understand that your feelings don't necessarily define you. They're just indicators of
Mhm.
your thoughts. Yeah, just because I feel like running over that person because they, didn't see my child when they were crossing the street. You know what I mean? That doesn't
Mhm.
define me. I'm not a murderer. I just feel murderous, but that's not, and I know that sounds really dramatic, but I mean, people can feel that way, right? But that's not who I really am. That's not the core of what I want to represent in the world. They know that Mia is a person who loves people, that would want to help anyone in the entire world, even maybe to her detriment, right? And so they can hear me when I'm out of character, but they can also know how to bring me back, how to ask me those questions like God does. Well, is that true, Mia? You know, like, are you sure that that's how you feel about it? Well, is it possible something else? Here's another thing that you get when you go to therapy or group therapy. I love group therapy because a lot of times people get to share their emotions in a safe space. And so you get to share. And then if somebody has something they want to comment on about your experience, they will ask you first, hey, are you open? Rodney, are you open? I have a thought that may be different from what you're saying. Are you open? Are you open to
Yeah,
hear something different? And
Right.
if
that's
Rodney,
right.
right, and if they're and if Rodney says no, I'm not open right now, then the group knows to respect the fact that right now he doesn't want to hear our thoughts or our opinions
Mhm.
about the situation. He just
Hmm.
needs to vent. But if
Hmm.
if 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 we ask Rodney, Rodney, are you open? Are you open?
Hmm.
Then if Rodney says yes, he's letting the group or that person know I'm open to hear something, even if it's what I don't want to hear, you
I
know?
love that. That's a
Yeah.
very powerful question. I
Hmm.
think that
Hmm.
we can ask each other and ask our friends
Hmm.
when they're going through things. And
Yeah.
we kind of
Hmm.
feel like maybe, what we're seeing is, uh-oh, I think my friend's getting stuck in anger or stuck in bitterness, or I can kind of see them sliding down that slippery slope. But to be able to say to them, hey, would you be open to considering, you
Yeah.
know,
Are you
a
open?
different path or
Mhm.
something else? I love that because then they can let you know. And most of the time, I think people, um, they can already tell in a way, I'm not in a good place.
Right.
And they are open. They just don't know which way to turn or what to think or where to go. And so somebody holding out a lifeline is so appreciated.
Yes, and to be able, and I think too, when you get so constipated with feelings that you don't really get to
Mhm.
share them, they just start coming out. I love this
Yeah.
analogy of gas and bowel movements, right? And because go to my website painunwasted.org, you there's a free brain detox. You can literally download that. It's an opportunity to, in a guided way, be able to kind of get the poop out, right? And because our
Yeah.
brains have so much that they're absorbing all day long, just like our bodies, we're eating, right? And
Mhm.
it's taking in things that we need and it's taking in things that we don't. And at the end of the day, it'd be good to have a bowel movement, but sometimes we don't, for a day, 2 days, whole week, like longer. And so we're
Yeah.
constipated. And when you're constipated, it starts to come out. Even when you don't want it to, whether you're passing gas everywhere, or your breath is smelling bad, or your skin,
Mhm.
right? That's what's happening with people's emotions. Like people are just popping off, and going off and eating a whole bunch of stuff or doing all kinds of things because of what's happening. They're not having that outlet. And so to have an outlet is very, very precious. But I think
Mhm.
also we being careful to, based on your relationship is how you would apply things. Because there's certain friends that I know I can just straight up interrupt them when they're talking. And that's what I need to do. Because they're not going to say, I'm open to anything. But based on our relationship, they're expecting me to interrupt them and be like, that is not right what you're saying. And I need to tell you right
Mhm.
now. Whereas
Do
another
you,
person,
me, a
sorry,
quick question. Do you
really quick,
think, oh, I'm
just want
sorry,
to
go
say
ahead.
this really fast. And just like, but with my husband, he's one of those people where I have to, because
Cut him off.
I have to say, like, hey, babe, are you open? You know what I mean? And he knows that with me too, to ask me that versus just cutting me off. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, I don't mean that in this. I'm not saying that for you, Rodney. Like, I know
No.
we're vibing and talking, but do you get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Okay, great.
One,
Yeah.
the one thing I was thinking about is I think that we get so wrapped up in this life. Okay, we gotta do this morning. Oh, I gotta go to work. I gotta make sure I got my keys, my cell phones. We're thinking about all this stuff, but oftentimes people don't start their day and end their day with a relationship with the Lord. I think that a whole lot of problems from the day, I think that if we can, and I'm not the best at it, and Lord help me to get better at it, I want to start my morning out in prayer with a little quiet time, whether it's over a cup of coffee, just take a little bit of the Lord in, because when you step outside your door in the morning, it's game time. And you're going to be dealing with people on the road, people on the job, people you don't know, stupid stuff that you hear on the radio, stupid stuff that comes out of people's mouths that you really don't need to hear. And it is really from the devil. And so if you buffet yourself with and put that shield of faith around you, when people start talking stuff, you can say, oh, good God, man, I gotta go. Man, it's good seeing you. I like that joke, but I gotta go. Step away from that stuff and we need to start guarding our hearts, guarding our ears, guarding our eyes, so that we're not taking in garbage, like you're saying. And then after we go through the day, and even in the middle of the day, when you have that moment, take some time, thank the Lord, say, Lord, I thank you for this job. Lord, I thank you for, getting me away from my boss and people. And another thing that, Mia, as you were helping people, I have heard it, I have seen it, I have experienced it. There are people who have just wicked ways about them, and they could be your boss, and they could have some of the nastiest, the nastiest mouth, the nastiest attitude, and they want to pop and chop, chop, chop because they're the boss and they're going to keep you under their foot, and you're not working hard enough. That type of stuff, if you don't have your spirit man and spirit woman, I'm talking about working out. If you're not strong enough spiritually to understand that this person has some issues within themselves, we don't have to take in all that garbage. We don't have to take in whatever someone says, whatever someone does. Keep yourself inside your spiritual bubble and just kind of like, oh, okay, that's your opinion. And regardless whether it's political, spiritual, I hear so many people try to draw you into a fight and, ask questions because they want to engage into that political battle. I tell people, I see it coming. And when they start talking about it, I say, I don't want to talk about that. Well, how do you feel about, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Because once you get into that battle and he said, and well, this is what I think, a lot of times when people start talking about what they think, I'm like, I really don't care about what you think. I really don't. I don't care about your opinion. I'd rather base it on the scripture. I'd rather take it to the Lord and try to get my information and discernment from above. Because when you look at the world and you look at the world for answers, you're not going to get the support that you want. You're not going to get proper answers. I believe that we really need to start the morning off in prayer. Midday, hey, it's like halfway through the day. Keep praying, thank the Lord. And at the night, before you go to bed, close it out with a little time with the Lord. And I think, hey, if maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's something that we need to kind of institute within our lives, because that kind of shields and knocks off a lot of stuff. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I hope everybody.
I believe you're absolutely right. I believe you're absolutely right. And I love what you're saying, because, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so
that's right.
Like there's already so many things that we may not be able to control, but there are things that we can control. And so what am I watching on TV? What am I listening to in my car? Who am I spending time with? Because even you see that in Elijah's story, which by the way, for those who wanted to know, that story that I was speaking about is in 1 Kings chapter 18, 19, and 20. You can kind of see the experience there. So 1 Kings chapter 18, 1 Kings, there's 2 Kings, but 1 Kings in the Bible, the book is called 1 Kings, and that's chapters 18 to 20. And so you see that, you do see Elijah. He's not hanging out with Jezebel and King Ahab all this time, because they are practicing toxicity. They are those people that you spoke about Rodney, who just want you under their thumb. They feel a sense of power. They have the position to do terrible things to people, and they're using their power just for that, and they are not interested in the ways of God. And the fact that you are, they want to use it as to their advantage, and so Elijah is not hanging out with those people. He has a
That's
servant.
right.
He has, God sends him to a widow. Like, there are times that I believe Elijah spends honestly alone and with God, just because it's so, and even his own people are experiencing transformation, which for some time, that's not always it's not always a wonderful thing when a person is changing. Sometimes it's not very pretty, And so he didn't have a lot of people that he could just really be around anyway. And I think that's another reason why
Mm-hmm.
God sent him Elijah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because he needed a friend. He had been
Right.
alone for a long time, but he actually needed a special companion that God had for him and sent his way, or sent him there. And so I love what you're saying, and definitely spending time with God whenever, however, first thing in the morning, middle day, any time, and figuring out what that looks like for you. And I love it because my husband, he was like, I don't I hope it's okay for me. Yeah, I can tell this. Okay, so he's in the process of getting back in shape. Same for me, right? And he's like, sometimes, oh, all right, I see you. But he's like, I may not be ready to get in the gym for an hour, but I'm gonna, right here in the home, I'm gonna do 5 push-ups, and I'm gonna do 5 of these, or I'll even just do one. I'm just going to commit to doing even one a day, because he found that in doing just one, he's probably going to be like, well, I can do 2 or 3 more, but I've only
Yeah.
committed to one. So as long as I do the one, I did what I said I was going to do, which is so good for your brain, by the way, doing what you say you're
Right.
going to do.
Is retraining your brain. Yeah.
I got one last question. I got to ask. And Nina, I know you can come in with some good stuff. And me, I got this question. I deal with a variety of people. And one of my things I told a friend of mine was there's in my head, this is something maybe, and I want you to help me with this, Mia, because I'm serious about this. And I told somebody, I said, there's only 2 people allowed in my head, me and the Lord. I don't let nobody get inside my head. And I think your head, your mind is master control. There's a lot of people who are very manipulative. They try to get inside your head. They try to get you feeling something, or doubting yourself, or making you feel sorry about something, or feeling less than about something. One of the things I tell people all the time, I don't care what people are going through, do not let anybody inside of master control. The only 2 people that are allowed is yourself personally and the Lord. Don't listen to nobody. Don't let nobody inside of here, because I think that the world around us is always trying to get into master control. They're always trying to get, and that's through advertisers, people's advice, people who you don't know, people who are jealous of you, people who don't like you, discriminate, whatever it is. You can't let that stuff get inside of master control, because that's going to seriously affect how you move. Am I right with that?
Wow. And what I think, I just want to be sure that I'm understanding when you say don't listen to people and don't let people get inside your head. What I'm hearing you say, and correct me, is don't let them have the final say, and don't let your decisions and choices be based on what other people say or think, or trying to get you to think and feel. That's what I hear you saying. And
That's
I
right.
would say, yes, I believe that we should make sure the scriptures tell us to cast down imaginations. The scriptures tell us to take every thought captive, right? And so, but that's a discipline, just like the
Mm-hmm.
exercising is a discipline, doing
That's
the
right.
brain detox is a discipline, right? Having the
Mm-hmm.
master control be discipline, that I'm going to take the time to even recognize that, there are thoughts and things that are coming in that don't belong to me. They belong to others. They're not the way I want to live. They're not the way I want to land. Those are all disciplines that we can grow in, right? Just like a muscle has to be grown, our brain muscle has to continue growing, or it will defect. And of course,
Mhm.
diseases and things like that can cause that as well.
That's
Injury
right.
can cause that. Mental illness can actually cause injury to the brain where we actually need help in various ways. And so absolutely, but we definitely want to know, who can I listen to? Because if
Mhm.
I don't listen to anyone, then I can find myself just as messed up as if I listen to everyone
Right.
also.
I'm talking
And
about checking the messenger. I'm talking
right,
about
like
checking the
checking the message
message
just
and
to
the
say,
messenger,
mhm,
because I think a lot of times people are quote unquote open,
sure,
and certain things that we shouldn't be open to, and people's
right,
advice and stuff like that. That's where I'm at, being more
totally.
cautious and having discernment about, that information that's coming in.
And I'm glad you said that, because when we talked about a person saying, "Are you open?" we want to be sure that we only are open to people that we know are going to be healthy and helpful. And here's another thing, those are two things that I use to help me. Is this healthy? And is this helpful? Right?
Mhm.
There are some things that are helpful, but they're not necessarily healthy. And there actually
Mhm.
are some things that are healthy, but they're not helpful for me or right now. And I kind of look at those things, right? When I'm making decisions, when I'm thinking, and I'm not saying I always get it right. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that those are two barometers for me, because Jesus himself even said, "There are many things that I have to say to you, but you cannot bear them now." Right? So there were things that
Mhm.
were healthy probably and helpful to him, to the people he was talking to, but he knew that at this moment in their life, in this season, it was going to fall on deaf ears. It was not going to be a good time. They were not going to receive it. There were other things though that he was always telling people, and they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to receive it, but he was planting seeds so that later
Mhm.
they would remember, oh, Jesus did say that on the third day he would rise again. Oh, he did say that they were going to kill him. Oh, he did, but they didn't want to hear that, so it's just kind of in yourself thinking about, is this helpful? If I listen to this right now, am I going to be moved forward towards a decision that will be helpful in my life? Or is this helpful information actually causing me more anxiety, pain, and stress? And I'm becoming unhealthy trying to apply this helpful information. It's really important to kind of weigh all those things as you move forward, because you know people are going to tell you things that are helpful to you, but if right now it's not a good time, that's where we need God to give us wisdom and discernment. Like, what do I do now? What do I not? And he totally will do it. We've seen in the scriptures that God is there to guide us, and he will send people, he will send
Mhm.
situations, he will allow for things to get us right where we want to be. He's not I had to learn, God is not there trying to trick me. Like, you got it wrong.
Right.
Ah,
Yeah.
2 points for
Mhm.
me, negative points for you, Mia. I used to think like that, like
Yeah.
figure out how to please God so I can be blessed and do the right thing. And so, get some more help from God. No, God is with me. He is for me. Even when I make the
Mhm.
worst mistakes of my life, while I was a sinner, that's when he chose to die for me, not when I was perfect. So I can
Hmm.
trust, even if I don't see it right now, that it is happening.
Hmm.
He
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
helping in some way.
There
Uh-oh.
you
So
go.
I hear my
I
kiddos
have
in the back here. Sorry,
a scripture verse I want to share with y'all that was just so meaningful to me when I was going through things, and I probably shared it before, but I
Hmm.
shared it again recently with a fellow who is going through a battle with cancer right now, and he doesn't even know. There's a question in his mind about how long he might have. But he
Hmm.
does know he wants to make the time he has count. And so we were talking about that, and I just felt led to share the scripture with him. I wanted to share it with all of you. This is David in Psalm 71, and he's been recounting how he has seen God do great things, but he's been through some terrible things, but he's seen God do great things all of his life. And he says, "Now when I'm old, please don't forsake me. Please, keep doing these things. Keep being real to me. Keep showing up for me." And this is what he says to God in verse 20. He says, "Thou, which hast showed me great and sore troubles, shalt quicken me again." Quicken means to bring alive. You will bring me alive again, and shalt bring me up again from the depths of the earth. Thou shalt increase my greatness and comfort me on every side. And I often think about when we are in the depths of despair, maybe we're completely depressed, we're feeling like life is over, life as I knew it is over. I can't picture anything good happening out of this. And I thought about this, Mia, particularly when you were talking about God giving Elijah a mission and how he does that with us. But first, he allows us to heal. He gives us the rest. He feeds us. He nourishes us, and gives us companionship, the right kind of companionship, what we need. And then he gives us the mission. But the mission doesn't come before when we're still overwhelmed. It comes later. And I love what he says here in particular about thou shalt increase my greatness. Because I wondered at first, the first time I read it, I thought, what does that even mean? Increase my greatness. Only God is great. But God is telling me, David is saying God is going to increase my greatness. And so I started looking through the scriptures. Well, what does it mean to be great even? What does that even mean? And what I looked in the scriptures, I looked across our world, who do we call great? And the conclusion I came to is it's not always the person who's wealthy. It's not always the person who has fame. It's not always the person who is wise. The people that we consider great are the ones who have a large sphere of influence. For whatever reason, it's a large sphere of influence because maybe they've been through something and people say, ooh, that person knows what they're talking about. They've already been through the fire. I can listen to them. It might be, somebody who has great athletic ability, and someone says to themselves, oh, I can listen to that person because they've already taken the steps to discipline themselves and hone their talent. And so I can listen to them because they know what they're talking about. That's that sphere of influence. And God is telling us when we go through these traumatic things, I will increase your greatness. I will increase your sphere of influence because of what you're going through now. People are going to listen to you in a way that they didn't listen to you before. And God assures us, I will comfort you on every side.
Yep.
It's so nice to know that
That's
there
right.
is a future ahead of us and that it's going to be a good one, that we're not always going to be in the depths of despair here or in
That's
the
right.
pit. That God is going to bring us up again and he's going to quicken us, bring us back to life, not just existence, but life, vitality. And he's going to give us that mission, and there's going to be comfort for us all along the way on every side.
A lot of times, also too, a lot of times people, and I understand what you're saying. Sometimes people want to run from their troubles and they want to go and isolate. Sometimes that is good to kind of remove yourself from, if it's something that is on the outside. If you know that you got yourself together and it's something on the outside that's causing you problems, a person, a situation. Yes, like you were talking about with family members, sometimes you have to remove yourself, but
To
also
rest. Just to
Matthew,
rest. Yeah.
also Matthew 11:28, it says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart, and you will find rest, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. A lot of times, a lot of people don't take things to the Lord, and because they think like, oh, well, I don't want to put that on him. He's got enough to do. No, he can handle anything that we throw at him, anything that we ask. And we should also, I do believe in therapy to the most, to the utmost. Yeah, we all need therapy. We need people to sit down with, but we also need to take it to the Lord in prayer too, because he can work through Mia. He can work through that person. He can work through that housing situation or that person to be able to meet those needs and to bring all that stuff together. So I think that we also need to keep that in mind too, that the Lord is there for us in every way. And we got a hotline. All we got to do is ask, because, and I think a lot of times think that they're going to, if they go to the Lord, they're going to get a busy signal. His phone is he's never busy. He's always there.
Wow, and I just love the comments that are coming up. Just I believe that's Chloe Jasper. She
Mhm.
was talking about, you know, what is influence and how you can, who you can trust. Can you trust them? Can you believe that they have your
Mhm.
best interest at heart? I think that's great. Also about, you know, being careful, you know, just who you listen to, like you were saying, Rodney, Tom
Yeah,
Brooks, saying we have to be careful not to be exclusive,
that's
right?
right.
Spiritual discernment is very important, and I
That's
think
right.
that's so true. You know, I know we're out of time now, but I do believe for a long time, as Christians, the idea of reaching out for help outside of the church was considered taboo. You
Hmm.
know, not realizing that all the therapeutic tools that are being, not, I'm not going to say all, that's not true.
Hmm.
There are some therapeutic tools that people are using that are not from God. They are from beneath, for sure. You know, and so we do need that discernment to know when a person that we've gone to for help is using something that is biblical, something that is actually helpful, or is this some other form of, you know, art, so to speak,
Mhm.
that is not
Hmm.
actually godly. And anything that causes me to not use my mind for myself, we don't do this mind over mind thing where
That's right.
this idea that, you know, I need to be in full control of my mind and of my thoughts,
Hmm.
and to use discernment and to be able to think and not just disconnect from my brain. Those things are not biblical, right? When I'm doing things
Right.
like that. So yeah, but I mean, I guess it's a whole nother show, you know, knowing that
Yeah.
what's actually
Whoop,
helpful and
whoop.
what might be out there that is not,
Mhm.
you know, something we might want to, you know, really look at and maybe be careful about, you know. So anyway,
That's right.
but thank you all so much for having me on. I love
Oh,
just being
thank you for coming. And you said
Yeah.
it yourself. That's another show. And so we need you to come back.
here. Awesome.
That's
Thank you.
right.
So I hope you will. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love coming here. It's great.
All
Absolutely.
Well,
right.
y'all go out and have a happy Monday and know that God
Yeah.
is with you and
Yeah,
God is for us, and you can be of good courage
that's
because
right.
we aren't alone.
Nope.
Mm.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye bye. Have a blessed week.